Hi, I'm still Rick Morris, and this is the second part of my video about turning a snowman ornament, just like this. In the first part, I went through how we did the shaping of the ornament right up until we're ready to sand. In the second part, I'm going to do the sanding and show you the finishing, part it off of the lathe, and then we'll take it over to the workbench and do the final steps, which are to put on a face and put a hanger on the top. So, let's get started again. And this is a sandpaper pack that I use for these small ornaments. I start out with 180 grit, with a 240, 320, 400, and finally 600. I like to sand it down pretty fine because I want a nice shiny surface on this when I'm done. If you're going for a more flat surface or a more natural wood effect, you might not need to do as much sanding. So I'm going to start off with 180 grit, as I said. The purpose of this first grit of paper is to remove any tool marks. You may have noticed there were some little spiraling marking there from where I was doing the gouge work. And there's some roughness up here that needs to be removed. So I'm going to remove all these tool marks and ease over a couple of the edges here. And then the purpose of all the rest of the sanding will be to remove the marks left by the previous grit of sanding paper. Now, I'm not going to make you sit through the entire sanding package. It's really boring. So I'm going to shut off the camera and I'll come back when I get done with the 600 grit. I'm back. One thing I forgot to mention before, I forgot to do, turn the lathe speed down when you're sanding. I was up at 1900 RPM. I've reduced it to 850. You can certainly sand at higher speeds, but it generates a lot of heat, and it really doesn't sand it much faster than a lower speed. 600 grit, sanding is done. Now I'm going to raise the speed back up to 1900. I want to put burn marks here and here, just as a decoration. I'm using an old scrap of sanding paper I folded up. You can see I've done it before. I just hold it right up against the surface that I want to burn and burn it nice and dark. There and here. Looks good. What I use for finish is a friction polish, what some people know as shellac. I've taken this shellac straight from the can and cut it with about, say, 3-part shellac to 1 part alcohol, just to dilute it just a little bit. You can buy friction polishes from any wood turning place, and they'll do a great job. They probably even have a little, I believe, a little wax dissolved into the finish. But I found the shellac works extremely well. It's very easy to get, and it's cheaper than the prepared friction polishes. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on just a piece of paper towel here. Fold it here because I need to get into that little crack there, that little edge. Sometimes it's hard to get into. And if you don't get some finish on there, even though you don't see it right away, it's going to show. So, I'm having a little bit of problem there getting it in. I put a little more finish on here. There. Get it in that crack there. And now make sure I get it right around there. About the only mistake you can make with friction polish is to put too much on the workpiece. And if you do that, as I know from experience, you start to polish it and you'll get little lines of finish showing up in there where it kind of bunches up. And about the only thing you can do then is sand it back down to bare wood and start all over. All right. That's good. I didn't have to put too much on there to get into the cracks. Now with the commercial polishes, they'll tell you right here, you take your rag here that you've got still damp with the polish, turn the lathe on at high speed, and hold it up here until it gets hot. That's the friction part of the polish. What I do is use carnauba wax. I'm going to rub some carnauba wax on it right now before I do anything else to it. It'll go right on top of the raw polish there. Now if you don't have carnauba wax, I bought a big chunk of this years ago, and I have still got lots of it. But if you don't have it, you can also buy polishing sticks. This is a mixture of waxes and I think a very, very fine abrasive. It's Hut PPP, which I think is perfect pin polish. And it works fine. But ever since I got my Conruba wax, this is the one I prefer to use. I'm going to just rub it on with the wax, the stick itself, just like that, all the surfaces, and then I'm going to take my waxing rag, and you can see this has got a lot of wax already melted into it. It's kind of stiff right now. Once it heats up from the friction, the rag gets nice and pliable, and it does a great job of melting in the wax and the friction polish. You can see how it's shining up there. And my fingers are getting really hot. But that's supposed to happen. Now, it's really safer to use a piece of paper towel for this polishing. And it works pretty well. I prefer using the wax rag because I do get the buildup of wax in the rag. And I think I get a better polish that way. But for safety's sake, you might want to consider just using paper towel. Paper towel, if this piece of rag gets caught somehow, it'll go whipping around. It could catch your fingers, pull them into the chuck, anything like that. Piece of paper towel though, if it gets caught, it's just going to tear away. Alright, that looks good. That's all there is to the finish. And the ornament is done almost as far as the turning is concerned. We just need to part it off. Going to go back to the narrow parting tool. Going to cut straight in here. I'll probably widen the cut a little bit. And I'm going to go all the way through this time. Final cut. This just gives me a little bit of room to angle the tool. Alright. Catch it here. Put that tool right in there. And just make a through cut with it. You can, of course, use any kind of parting tool you want to. It'll work fine. So there's our ornament. You're generally going to have that little nub right there where the wood breaks off before it can cut through. I've got a curved carving chisel right here that I use just to cut that little nub right off, but you can get it with a pocket knife or anything else. Once I finish this with putting on the face and so forth, I'll put a little of the friction polish down there just to seal the wood, but it's not like it's a real problem. To go from the turned snowman, essentially a shaped blank now, into a finished snowman like this, there's only a few more steps involved, and that is to put on a hanger, to put on a nose, and to put on the eyes and the buttons. I'm going to show a short video clip of how I make the nose, and then another short video clip of how I make the hanger, and then I will come back, get out the wood burner and my drill, and we'll take this blank and turn it into a finished snowman ornament. Now the snowman's face has got eyes, nose, buttons, and so forth. On the face, though, I like to use a small matte pen to make the nose so that it kind of pops out there like that. Now the matte pen right here, which is roughly, I think, the best size that I found for these snowmen. The shaft of the pen there is really quite narrow. I don't have a drill bit that's small. I drill a 1/16 inch hole drill bit. I take the end of this pen with the needle nose pliers, and I'm going to bend it back on itself, just like that. There we go. About like that. So now that's going to push into that 1/16 hole pretty good, and the point of it, which is now going to be facing towards the top of the hole, you push it in there, it's not going to pull out very well at all because that tip is going to catch in the wood. Before I put it into the hole in the snowman, I will put in a drop of thick CA glue, push this in place, and it's in there to stay. It's not going to come out, and it won't be a safety hazard. I mentioned earlier, I make my own hangers for these ornaments, which looks just like this. I make these little hangers out of craft wire. It's a 16 gauge craft wire. You can get it from any craft store and in a bunch of different colors. So I start with this, and I mark about a 2-inch section there. I'm going to cut that off. I've got a 2-inch length of craft wire, which I'm just going to center on the main post, also known as a nail. Wrap it around once like this. Get it started like so. And then I'm going to use a pair of pliers and just start making a twist. This goes pretty easy. I've got the pliers jaws covered in tape just to prevent them from marking too much, but the twist part that we're looking at there, not going to matter whether it's marked or not because it's going to be hidden in the wood. So I come out with that, grab it there, and just straighten the loop up at the top. Then I take it and I cut it off to about a 1/2 inch or so, something like that. And then that small hole that I drill right in the top of the spiraling here is going to screw right into that hole very nicely. Before I drive it in, I'll put in a drop of thick CA glue, screw it down in there, and it holds good and solid. I've got my hangers made. I've got my noses made. So I'm ready to start the final work on the snowman and put the nose on the snowman shape here. And I'm going to drill the nose hole right in here. You want the nose to be vertically in line with where you're going to put the buttons. And I'm going to put the buttons right down here. So I've got a 1/16 inch drill bit here. It's the smallest one I've got, and it breaks frequently enough so that I don't want to bother with getting a smaller one. As I showed you on the nose pieces, the little map pins that have a hook pin on the end, those work quite well with the bend in it in a 1/16 inch hole. They fit in there tight and they won't pull out, and that's what you want, because you don't want to take a chance of a small piece coming apart in the kid's hands. So I just put the nose in right down here. He's not going to have a mouth anywhere. So right about there looks good. Start the drill slow so that it doesn't skate all over the place. And then drill in maybe 1/2 inch or so. That's probably more than enough right there. So we've got a little nose hole right there. I'm using a thick viscosity CA glue. It's just a little bit of extra insurance. And I'm just going to put 1 drop right on the nose hole and stick the nose piece in. So let me get a drop of glue out of there. I don't want much because I don't want a lot of glue slopping around there when I push the pin in. There's the pin. Put it in the hole and then force it in. Occasionally, there we go. Sometimes I'll have to use a pair of pliers to actually get it in there. But like I say, you want it in tight. Now, I need a hanger. I'm going to put a hanger on this. I've got silver hangers, I got brass hangers, and I got this little copper colored hanger. And I like the copper ones myself. I'm going to just check it first. Okay, it's kind of an easy fit there. I'm going to try and tighten up that fit because, as with the nose, I don't want this piece accidentally coming out. Not only would the piece fall off the tree, but we don't want it coming out in a child's hands or anything. I'm going to take the center of the 2 prongs right down at the bottom and just pry them apart a little bit. At least that's what I'm going to try and do. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to do. And that'll just give me, I don't know if that shows, but that gives me it'll give me a tighter fit into the hole. Let's just check that. That's going to go in very tightly, and that's exactly what I want. All right, I need a drop of the high viscosity glue. In this case, I hope it will go down in the hole with the hanger. Put the hanger in. There we go. And just kind of screw it down in place. Because of the spiraling, it will actually screw a little bit. Get it down in there well. Take a look at it. It's a little crooked, so bend it a wee bit there. And to the extent that I can, there's not much glue left on the surface, but I just wiped it off there. Okay, good. All right, the next step is to bring in a wood burner, which I've got right here. And I'm going to burn in the eyes, and I'm going to burn in the buttons. And a wood burner is not a necessity by any means. You can use a felt tip pen, that'll work fine. I'm going to set it up to about a 7 right there. I know from experience that's about what I need for this kind of wood and this kind of work. So I need 3 buttons, or we could do 2 buttons, and I'm going to put them right here. I didn't get the nose placed exactly where I wanted it. And for buttons, of course, we just want the nice little circle. 1 button there, 1 button here, and 1 more button down here. Good. The eyes, of course, need to be evenly centered on the sides of the nose. And I'm going to put a little circle for the eye with an eyeball in it instead of just a dot. You can certainly just use a little splat there and it would work fine. I like to put more of an expression on the snowman. So I'm going to draw a little circle for both eyes. And this is a little more difficult to get a nice even circle there. There's one eye. And put the other eye right over here. Alright, there's the other eye. I'm going to give him a pupil. I think I'll make him look kind of down and to the right. So there's his pupil on his right eye and his pupil on his left eye. And I want to give him some eyebrows, so give him a little bit of a raised eyebrow here. And there we go. So this snowman is complete. I've only got about another 20 to finish up.